the EB-2 NIW green card is a bit more challenging and complicated than it might look like from everything you've seen or we've seen across these last few years, where people are just saying, like, if you have an advanced degree, you're eligible. So we're going to go a bit in details about why that is and what are the type of profiles that actually do have a good NIW case and how to think about it. So Dorina, can we do a bit of a high-level introductory conversation about what's NIW, what are the main things?
Yeah, sure. So the NIW is second preference, a green card category. It is a self-sponsored petition, so you don't need an employer necessarily. So that makes it attractive, and especially in the last, I want to say, 2 years, 1 year and a half, 2 years, with a lot of the layoffs, the technology companies in the United States. So a little bit of background on that is, obviously, if you're on H-1B for some of these companies, then the next step is for the company to sponsor you for a green card through the PERM process. If the company goes through a layoff, they have to suspend their PERM process for at least 6 months. Now, if you have multiple layoffs back to back or every 6 months, then that means that you won't be able to file PERM for your employees for a very long time. So with that in mind, the companies decided, okay, we can do NIW. Still EB-2, still you're gonna get your I-140, and especially for Indian and Chinese nationals, they can. That means that with an approved I-140, you can extend your H-1B past the 6th year. So with that, what happened was USCIS was flooded with all these cases where I call them corporate cases, where like a lot of the petitioners or the beneficiary at this point basically doesn't really have what it requires, what NIW requires. What they have is the typical corporate profile. They worked for Meta or for Google or for Apple or for whoever for 5-10 years. Everything that they have done is for that employer. Now compare that to the NIW requirement, where you have to show that your work is of national interest. It's way broader. You also have to show examples of how your work has benefited the national interest and how it's going to benefit it prospectively. So if you are in this environment where you develop the best product for your company made $10 billion, that's great for them. But again, it doesn't impact the national interest, at least according to the USCIS. So that's the biggest problem currently with the NIW.
Yeah, and the NIW has a very important piece on the endeavor. So it's not just about your past or being accomplished. Like EB-1 is mostly about the past. Sure, you need to talk a bit about continuing with your field of endeavor, but most of the case is focused on your accomplishments to date. Now, the NIW has the endeavor, like what exactly is it that you're going to do and how is that going to benefit the US? So
so that adds additional hurdle, because you have to show, you have to be really specific and clear about your endeavor and what you're going to do in the future. And not only that, but how is that going to benefit the national interest? And at this point, USCIS wants to see some evidence that you've already done that to some extent, so that, you can position yourself that, in front of USCIS, that you're actually going to do the same thing in the future. And it's going to have the same impact to the national interest. So we see a little bit of that where people have cases, more on the business side of things, where it's like, okay, I'm going to open a business or a consulting of sorts. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. They produce beautiful business plan, 5-year business plan. They tell us what they're going to do in the next 5 years, but they really don't have anything that, that they can back it up with. It's speculative. Right, so and USCIS doesn't like speculative. So those are some of the issues with these cases.
Yeah, because the first prong, as you were talking about, is the substantial merit and national importance of your endeavor. But there's also the well-positioned. So if you say you're going to do something, but you don't have anything, there's no company, it's just like a nice plan.
Yeah, that's a problem because I mean, with the well-positioned prong, so that's the second prong. I usually tell clients this is like a mini EB-1.
Yeah.
So now show me, how show me your activities, right? Show me, do you have papers? Do you sit on boards for organizations or memberships? Do you speak at conferences? Do you judge people's work or professionals, other professionals? So we pull some of that from the EB-1. That's why I call it a mini EB-1. Now to compare that to EB-1 a little bit is sometimes if you tell me I have a membership in whatever organization, it might work for NIW. It shows engagement. It shows that maybe you sit on a committee, maybe you're a mentor, maybe you have other activities going on with that organization. That will be great for the NIW. Now that organization might not satisfy the requirement for EB-1, so we have to be careful with that. But the idea is very similar.
Yeah. And what are some actually good profiles for NIW? Like when do you think like, okay, this is a good candidate for this?
So if we look at the NIW when it was first designed, it was more for, the researchers, it was for individuals with PhDs, with the scholars. And then later, and especially like a few years ago, they broadened up the, basically the people who could qualify. So yes, so the better profiles are, yes, the researchers and the PhDs, the scholars, because naturally, they have the publications, they have the citations, and when you have that, you have impact to the national. You've impacted the national interest. People are using your work, so naturally, these are the stronger profiles because your work speaks for itself, basically.
Yeah, in a way, NIW is way more flexible than EB-1A, but in a way it's much more rigid because there are some profiles that are actually much better for EB-1A than NIW, right? Like you have a great success with your company, maybe you have a marketing agency, you have everything you need, you're very well acclaimed in your field, but what you're doing is, it's really hard to argue that this is in the national interest.
Yeah, and that's the national interest part. What is of national interest? I usually tell clients, well, everything is of U.S. national interest if you can prove it. So that it's very subjective, and what's national interest for you might not be the same for the officer. So there's that element of being subjective here, and that's the problem with. It's not a problem. It's just the way the NIW works. So if you have, sometimes you have better chance with the EB-1, even though it's a higher bar, at least in theory. But it's more structured. You have an outline on EB-1. It's either you have it or you don't. Versus the NIW, yes, you have it kind of. We can strengthen it, maybe not. You can bring in a lot of things from your experience, current experience, prior experience. But and this is the part that makes it harder, at least in my opinion, than the EB-1, because EB-1 is an outline.
Yeah, there's still discretion.
It is discretionary. I'm not saying it's like you're gonna get it, immediately, but you're working off of a structure.
Yeah, if you get an aggressive RFE, at least it's easier in a way to answer why something is wrong or something something you have already proved. With an NIW, if you get an RFE, this is not national interest. Like what?
Yeah, how do you, there's only so much government reports and documents you can pull out of internet to argue that this is, of national interest. Obviously, there are things like, no, if you're in the healthcare industry, if you're, in the AI, the technology, obviously this is of national interest. I say obviously, until it isn't, right? Yeah. But, that will be easier, even in an RFE or a notice of intent to deny, that would be easier to show. Now, if it's something more on the soft side of things, like in a business or similar fields or the artistic fields, right? Is it of national interest? Absolutely. Can you prove it? Yeah. Is USCIS gonna buy it? We don't know.
Yeah. And if you get denied, you cannot sue, right?
Yeah, there is this thing that, if you have a really strong NIW and then despite that USCIS denies it, you cannot sue for wrongful denial in federal court. It's just the way it works. It's a discretionary petition, so the federal court will push it back. Versus on EB-1, if you get a denial, you can take that to federal court and sue for wrongful denial, abuse of discretion, and a few other things.
We are not saying the NIW is not a great option. It is. It's one of the 2 green cards that you can self-sponsor in the employment section of the immigration law. However, it's very discretionary, very subjective, and unless you have a great case that is very clear on why this is your endeavor is in national interest and you're well positioned, it is a risky option to go. And if you get pushback, there's not so much that you can do. So sometimes it makes more sense to spend some time building and improving your EB-1A profile and just go for that versus going through this frustration of denials and refiling and this process that takes actually a long time.